It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Folks, it was a week ago today that the Arkansas Senate successfully passed an amendment to the Constitution that we're going to be voting on in 2020, which would ask us to extend a half-cent sales tax that is set to expire in 2022. Originally, this was a 10-year program sold to the people in 2011. We voted on it in 2012 to fund specific projects. It was former State Representative Jonathan Barnett put into place. He actually was against this particular piece of legislation because he felt like it went against what the people were told, that it would sunset. And it's something that we've talked about, how this fuels skepticism in government, that you can't believe what they tell you. Hey, we'll grow government now and shrink it later. And then, of course, when it comes time to shrink it, they don't shrink it. But that really wasn't very exciting. What happened on the Arkansas Senate floor wasn't that exciting. There was no debate. It was what happened directly afterward that there seemed to be a temporary wrench thrown into things when Senator Mark Johnson, who had voted for this piece of legislation, rose and immediately asked for a notice of reconsideration, which effectively froze the bill for 3 days. And everyone started scrambling. Here now to talk more about that is Senator Mark Johnson. Mark, thanks for being with us this morning.
My pleasure, Paul. Good to hear your voice.
Absolutely.
You're in Little Rock, I guess, today.
I am. We're broadcasting here from the Answer Studios, 101.1 The Answer. We're always glad that they let us broadcast here. So, Mark, tell us, sir. I mean, what was the whole point of doing that maneuver? Well,
I have to first start with what the legislation we voted on, which is a referred constitutional amendment, is, and then what my bill does and how it affects that. Now, the measure, and I forget it, it's a House joint resolution, so it's a referred constitutional amendment that would extend the, as you mentioned, the half-cent sales tax that goes to fund highways. This is part of the governor's package for fixing our roads, and I supported that. And I supported it day one. I never made any bones about it during my campaign that we had a serious problem with our highways. I have a very rural district where it's needed. All my county judges have shown me their needs, and so I always planned on voting for the bill. The governor outlined in his highway package how he was going to fund this. We had already passed a bill that would increase at the wholesale level what would work out to about 3 cents a gallon on gasoline and about 6 cents a gallon on diesel fuel. And then the third part of that three-legged stool to fund highways was dedicated revenues from the casinos, which Amendment 100 was passed last November, and it would basically enshrine into the Constitution the two existing casinos at the racetracks in West Memphis and in Hot Springs, and would allow 2 more casinos to be built in Pine Bluff and in Polk County. I should say Jefferson County and Polk County. It didn't. Everyone assumes it'll be Pine Bluff, but
of course,
it could be elsewhere. But the bottom line is the governor tried, I think, to make good the promise of the proponents of the gambling amendment that, if you recall, they said drive Arkansas forward, I think was the name of their campaign, and they would, if you vote for this, you get your roads fixed. Well, there was not a single solitary word in that amendment, which is now Amendment 100 of the state constitution, that says anything about highways or roads. It was just a shell game to get the gambling interest bill or amendment passed. So I came up with my bill, which is Senate Bill 498, which would amend Amendment 100, and I'll come back to the process on that in a moment. But all the revenue from the casinos is not dedicated to highways. However, the governor and I both, as a matter of fact, I think there's a strong consensus in the legislature to dedicate that casino revenue, tax revenue, to the highways. And basically, our will, meaning the legislature and the governor's will, is to make good on the promise that the gambling interest didn't do. They told the people they were doing this, and so basically this would make them keep their promise. So I voted for the referred constitutional amendment, but I gave notice of reconsideration, so I'd have a moment to speak with the governor of how this fit into the entire revenue package for the.
Okay. So this procedure sent everyone scrambling. It was and this is really sad, but it was really the most interesting thing that's happened in the Senate the entire session, because things didn't go according to plan, and really there's a lot of predetermined outcomes that I believe kind of make you guys a formality sometimes, and that's very frustrating because I love the idea of legislating and using procedure. You have been around the Capitol since you were very young. And
since I was born, really.
Since you were born, and you know the rules backwards and forwards. And what was interesting to me is Senator Hester and Senator Ballinger, who voted against the referral constitutional amendment after you left the chamber, because I know you left the chamber. They were trying to figure out how to cancel your notice of reconsideration, because it held the bill up for 3 days, and they even voted against it. I thought that was very strange. So tell us, can you just tell us about that procedure, what it means, and there's a lot of people there that don't know the rules like you do, sir.
Well, Paul, first of all, to go into all of the machinations and why people do things, we only have, how many hours did you say we had to do this?
Oh yeah.
The thing is, but to kind of synopsize what's going on here, the rule allows a senator who votes on the prevailing side. So if it passes, that means you voted yes. If it fails, it means you voted no, to give a notice of reconsideration. And that's different from a motion to reconsider. And now let me say that we learned that after the 54th day of the session, which we've already passed, you can do such a notice, but it must be immediately reconsidered, which means you'd have to vote. You didn't get the 3 days. But the notice of reconsideration means you have up to 3 days to bring that measure back and vote on it again. If you do nothing, it moves forward. It's essentially a hold. But I've used it one other time this session, and it had to do with a bill that I wasn't sure what it did. Actually, I've done it twice. So I guess I've done it a total of 3 times now. If you're not sure about something, you reconsider. Let's think about this a minute. In both those cases, I gave other cases, I gave a reconsideration notice. And in one case, it was a bill by Senator Breanne Davis relating to how property is disposed of, whether it should go to the auditor's office or not. And after discussions with the auditor's office and with the senator, I released my hold the next day. The other was a bill by Senator Ballinger, which had to do with alimony. And
I remember that one. Actually, yeah, I was in the room for that one.
I was uncomfortable with some of the things in that, and really wanted an opportunity to, if Bob could fill me in on why this bill was needed, I would have done that. He chose to go a different route. I think he's going to file another bill. But the point is, it's a slowdown.
It's a slowdown. So let
me tell you why why we needed a slowdown.
Okay, right.
I want everybody to understand the most important thing about this. The gambling interest wrote their own amendment. I think they fooled the people of Arkansas to voting for it. They voted themselves with 2 out-of-state owned casinos that are here, voted themselves a monopoly, and will allow 2 other out-of-state interests to come in and run a casino. And they said this money's going to go to highways. Well, my bill would restore the funding, because what the dirty little secret that's not known by a lot of people in Arkansas is that Amendment 100 actually reduces the taxes paid by the 2 existing some people call them racinos. It's Oaklawn and Southland. We don't have to beat around the bush. It reduces their taxes paid to the state by over 50%.
Gosh.
And the revenue estimate from the Bureau of Legislative Research that I looked at, in fiscal year 2020, it would go from $67 million a year to about $31 million a year. And so what my attempt, and this is what Senate Bill 498 does, it tries to solve the problems created by Amendment 100, which includes the fact that you told a county in west central Arkansas that you will have a casino, and that county voted against it. So we're hopefully going to fix that. But the main thing is, the reason this had to do with the 1/2 cent sales tax is it's part of the funding that the governor wants. And I don't think everyone understood how this prospective casino funding fits into the highway plan. And that's why it was relevant. Now, my mistake, and I apologize to him for it, was not to inform the leader of the Senate, our President Pro Tem, what I was doing, because that's a courtesy. And you mentioned how things are kind of predetermined. If we didn't have some understanding on procedure, then it would be chaos in there. And it kind of was for a minute or two. And I think that's because a lot of people weren't aware of the rule and what I was doing.
I thought it was fantastic. I think you should do it more often. I think everybody should do it more often. I think they should legislate. But
Jim and I talked about it, and as soon as he was a little bit upset when we walked out in the hall.
It looked like it.
When I explained to him what I was doing, and actually his first reaction was, your bill has nothing to do with this. And as soon as I explained why it did, he totally turned around and said, I understand. He said, that's fine. I said, now, he said, how long do you want to hold it? I said, I don't want to hold it at all. I said, I just want people to understand how it fits into the mechanism. And as you saw, Paul, if you were there, I went back to the well and I explained purpose of 498 and what we're trying to do and how it fit into the process, and then I moved to withdraw my notice of reconsideration.
Okay, yeah, and so let's talk real quick. Senate Bill 498. This is attempting to address really the tax cuts the casinos got by being written into the Constitution. So is this going to raise taxes on casinos?
Well, if it passes, it would. But it would bring them back to where they are today, more or less. And let me mention this, and this is where we really get in the weeds, Paul. Amendment 7 to the Arkansas Constitution, I think most people know, it gives the people the right to to initiate amendments and acts to the Constitution. And it was passed about 100 years ago. This is initiative and referendum. Now, you can sign petitions, you get something on the ballot, you vote on it, it's law, or it's an amendment to the Constitution. A little known thing is it also says that any measure, I believe, means constitutional amendment or initiated act, passed by the voters. And that would also, let me throw in, that also means measures referred by the legislature. Anything voted on by the people can be amended by 2/3 vote of both houses. So the House and Senate, by 2/3 vote, could amend Amendment 100. Now, there's a 1951 court case, which I think is horrible, but it basically says, no, the words in the Constitution don't mean what they say. And we have been operating on that for, about 70 years. The thing is that I believe it means what it says. And if you'll recall, last year, the Supreme Court in the sovereign immunity case said the words of the Constitution mean what they say in that instance. So what Amendment 100, what Senate Bill 498 would do would be to use that process outlined in the Constitution. And this would absolutely have to go to the Supreme Court before we would do it. But it would allow us to amend Amendment 100, in my opinion, fix Amendment 100, and it would do a few things, and let me run through them real quick. One, it would require the people of Pope and Jefferson counties to actually get to vote on whether or not they would have a casino. Now, some people have said, look, Jefferson County made it clear when they voted overwhelmingly for Amendment 100 that they wanted it, and I could see taking that out. But in Pope County, the people voted against it, and they're very adamant against it, and I say, then you need to have a referendum. If it were rejected in Pope County, then the two neighboring counties that are bisected by an interstate highway, which would basically mean Johnson and Conway County, but I don't like putting the name of the county in the Constitution, then they could each hold referendums if they chose. And if both of them chose to do it, the one with the highest percentage of vote would have the opportunity to be awarded a casino. Now, that's how we solve the problem of forcing something down someone's throat that doesn't want it. But when we get back to the tax rate, the current tax rate in Amendment 100, on their first $150 million, it's 13%. And this would increase that to 20%.
And that's what it was before they passed the amendment?
Well, I don't know the exact figure, but what it would do, it would bring the revenue up closer to that $67 million
which is what we used to get. Okay.
Well, the so-called, are getting now, the so-called electronic games of skill would generate about $67 million. Now, what also I do, now the amendment actually spells out where the money is spent. For example, it says that the net casino gaming revenues would be dedicated to a purse and awards fund, that is to pay for horse racing purses, of 17.5% of those net revenues. Well, I would reduce that to 7.5%, and I would increase the amount of the revenue that goes to the state of Arkansas from 55% to 65%. Now, I did not touch with what goes to the cities or counties in there. That's what they need that.
Interesting.
But this basically, it would increase the revenue, and the net result would be it would get us close and to where we are now on revenue from electronic games of skill.
Certainly, and I talked to you, before you've come on the show a couple times. Certainly, this whole casino process is a mess. We've seen what happened with medical marijuana. We see how difficult that is. This clearly needs, the oversight of the legislature, and that amendment was extremely fishy to begin with, and of course the people want it.
That's exactly right, Paul. And one of the things I'm working on is a constitutional amendment, a referred constitutional amendment, not using this process, to hopefully fix the initiative process where we set a little bit higher bar to change the Constitution. We make it a little harder for special interests to come in from out of state, spend $2-3 million, and buy themselves a monopoly, which is exactly what happened with the
that is true. That is true. That is what happened. While I have you on the phone, we don't have a lot of time left, but
yes,
I would just like to talk to you real quick about taxes in Arkansas. Just get your opinion, because I know you voted, for the governor's highway plan, or at least the half-cent sales tax that's set to expire, to ask the people to renew it. We did have an income tax cut, $95 million. Mm-hmm. I support that. That was awesome. But then we have this $400 million highway plan, gas tax increases, sales tax, what I believe is a new tax. They're talking about a cigarette tax that'll raise another $100 million, and that 911 tax that's going to raise another $16 million, and maybe more, internet sales tax, everything else. Are you concerned at all, Senator Johnson, about the amount of money that may be coming from the people, the increase at the end of session versus when you guys started at the beginning?
Well, Paul, I think that we did the right thing in putting the income tax first. That was an important thing. And I did vote for the other highway tax bill. And I make it clear, we got to pay for highways. The fairest way to do it is on a user fee. I would not have preferred that the half-cent general sales tax be used that way, but it was the alternative that was presented to us, and because I recognized the need, I supported it. Now, your point is that we need to keep raising taxes, and the fact of the matter is, if we can get some spending under control in other areas, we can do that. Now, you mentioned 911 tax. I'm absolutely for that, because I've seen the problems of the fact that we created this 911 system based on landline phones, and we put just a nominal tax on to be paid toward that on cell phones, and it's a user fee. I mean, I've got a fee on my cell phone that I pay to AT&T that if I need roadside assistance, I think I pay $4.95 a month, and if I need a tow truck or someone to get me in my car and I've locked myself out, it's included in that. And I look at the 911 fee as the same kind of thing. We had an imbalance between landlines and cell phones, and now we have a shortage of funds because everybody's getting rid of their landlines and everybody has a cell phone.
Well, and that's the exact we've got to go, but that's the exact same argument they make for the roads because of fuel efficient vehicles and hybrids. Mark Johnson, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much for being on the program and letting us know what's going on.
Always a pleasure.
We'll talk to you soon. Folks, we got to take a break.
Yes,
back in just a moment.
Bye-bye.